Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by our military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story with Marine veteran Kris Consiglio. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And go to the Lost Art website. That's the lostart.podbean.com. Go check it out and be sure to click on that merchandise tab and get some cool gear to help support the podcast and get our veteran voices out for all to hear. You can also check us out on YouTube at The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. So be sure to smash that like button and also subscribe. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, and email me directly at thelostartwithandrewcox@gmail.com.
The depot was awesome. I learned a lot. I was selected as a staff sergeant in school. So when I did that partial cycle and half of my first cycle, I was a sergeant. And then I selected and then continued on as a staff sergeant. And then I was actually meritoriously promoted as a drill master and was selected to gunny. So I went as a sergeant, left as a gunny, and really understanding all that stuff. I understand, sorry, my brothers that were staff sergeants for like 5 years, they all hate me. I'm sorry. But, you know, it was just a progression to move up. And then when I got selected, I remember I got selected July 2nd because that was when the meritorious promotion happened.
Yeah.
And we had the 4th of July 96 happen. And the day I came back from the 96, it was like, you got orders. It was just that email waiting for me. And I was going to MWSS 273 in Beaufort, South Carolina. And they were deploying 2 months after I checked in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like,
dang, that's a quick turnaround. Yeah. So you have to do the move cross country. Now with your wife, one child at this point?
2 kids. So actually 6 months before drill instructor school, you know, I decided to make things more complicated and we had a child. So it actually started before that when I came back from that second deployment. It was 2007. Into, you know, mid 2007, whatever. And I came back from deployment. A few weeks later, my wife's getting a phone call saying, "Hey, why aren't you here? You're activated to deploy." Now she still had her IRR time, like on contract. So while I was deployed, they were trying to reach her to say, "Hey, you're going to deploy with us," and she didn't know about that. So a few weeks later, she's getting a call like, you know, you need to be here now kind of thing. And during the deployment, we were talking about having another baby. So it was kind of like, well, that answers that.
Yeah.
You know, and so we decided to have another child. And then 6 months before I came to DI school, my second daughter was born. And so my wife had her hands full dealing with 2 little girls and a dumb drill instructor. So
and drill instructor hours, you're not around, so she was doing it all by herself basically. So
100%. Yeah, we were just talking about it, and you know, just times where she would bring me chow. You know, it's like 10:30 at night because that was when lights out, and I'm just dead. I haven't seen anybody in a couple of days, and I look back, and kids are in the car seat, and it was like, hand some chow, spend some time. I'm trying not to fall asleep, and you know, it was just kind of the dynamic of how it went. But yeah.
Well, talk to me now. You're transitioning, move to North Carolina, South Carolina.
Yeah.
South Carolina? Yeah. South Carolina. All right. So you move over there, and 2 months after you get there is when you're going to deploy. So what was that transition for you? How was that?
So I think it was actually 3 months, but either way, we checked in over there. We bought our first house, you know, and things were getting kind of set up. And then right before deployment, they were like, "Hey, we're going to bring on this other gunny as an IA just because you're coming off the B billet." And I don't know, just wanted to bring another person on. So I was like, whatever, fine. It was me just, I found an opportunity to try to humble myself to just, get down with the Lance Corporals and be like, teach me, like, tell me what you guys are doing, and really put myself in a position to know that no matter staffing's you or not, I've got rust I need to bust off and, get back into it, stuff like that. So that's where my focus was. Went out on the deployment. That was a wild experience. It was first time we went to Camp Leatherneck. That was just, it was kind of like a very comfortable place in a sense. It was, it's weird to say, but it wasn't really a crazy place to be. We had chow halls all over the place and like structured buildings and things like that. So it was really just a different view on a deployment.
Right.
And so one of our missions that were out there was basically, it was just cleanup. So we're collecting all the AM2 matting and all those structures and things like that. We're collecting like, I think over 4 million square feet of matting dispersed all over Afghanistan. So we're just collecting all this stuff so we can ship back. Wow. And another mission we had was relocating the Harriers from Kandahar over to Leatherneck or over to Bastion. And that was the first time I went over to Kandahar. And when I went to Kandahar, my mind was blown because I'm seeing the Army like kind of rolling in PT gear, and there was like the boardwalk, and I'm like, where the heck am I?
Wow.
Like, what is happening right now? Like, are those bracelets you could buy? Like, what's happening right now? So it was just kind of wild to think about, but we've been around there for a while. So everything's built up and structured. And again, just my experience through deployments was just a lot different. So, couldn't complain about it. So we relocate the Harriers over there, and basically it's an anchor that you have to install into the ground for the Harriers to do their vertical testing for their weights and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah.
You have to drill into the ground and put basically a big concrete anchor underneath in the ground, and then it's got to be able to have this load test to hold the birds, right? So it's all FAA squared out and all sort of fun stuff. But if you're digging into that, I called it Jesus dirt because it's been around since the stuff is impenetrable. I felt like I was Bruce Willis in Armageddon. It was just like, what is happening? Because we would start drilling. We're using drills and we're breaking tips because the ground, the rocks and all this other, sediment and all this. And we're drilling down and we're running into problems where these bedrocks are falling into the hole, and you just put a drill on top of a bedrock, it's just going to spin.
Yeah.
We have no idea how to figure this out. So we're trying to fish them out. And we ended up searching all around, fabricating shop vacs and putting suction ends and sucking up these rocks, these big rocks, like boulder sized rocks like that. And that was the way we pretty much accomplished that. And it was just a nonsense situation. But we had a month to do it. The CG at the time was like, you got a month to do it. We did it in 3 weeks. I have a picture of us, finishing up, and we were standing on the AM2 matting, and I got a temperature gauge, and it was reading at like 156 degrees on the surface. So we're all just sitting there just melting. And unfortunately, just a few weeks later, that area got attacked, and lost a couple Marines there. But it was just
you were there when that attack happened?
So I was actually in Manas. I was on my way out and heard that this has all happened. And a couple of our crash fire rescue guys and some of our bulk fuelers, were engaged and involved with that conflict. So it was like, again, it was just weird to think like we went through an entire deployment and there was a few areas that would get attacked, and we would go out to the LZs because we would have to inspect them and make sure that they were, still usable and all that other stuff. So there were certain areas that would, were hostile and things like that. LZ like Alcatraz that was rough. And there was a couple areas that I remember that were just like, I feel so bad for these guys. You know, it's
Yeah.
living in just shitholes. But overall, you know, the hostility, the conflicts weren't as heavy as the past, you know, the other deployments. So all that happened at the end was just like, oh, damn it. So
yeah, no kidding. And that was that was big news when all that went down.
yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because it was kind of just, I think everyone kind of knew it was going to like potential. It was very potential that it could happen because on the backside of it, it was so wide open. And there really wasn't enough defense to structure that. And it was an unfortunate lesson learned that we had to experience. So
yeah. And I would say that over time, I'm sure the Marine Corps learned from that
right.
for sure. So, which is a good thing. At least you learn from it, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunate incident, but.
Right.
All right. And then, go ahead and talk me through, because you were getting ready to leave at this point in the deployment. Is that right?
Right. So came back from the deployment and this was another MWSS. So their org structure is definitely different. They try to mirror more of a line company or a battalion, but their org chart is different. So the companies themselves break out and they don't have first sergeant. So what normally they do is they just have a gunny fill that billet in a sense. And when I came back from the deployment, the sergeant major at the time's like, hey, you put an F on your fit rep? Yep. Perfect. You're going to go be the first sergeant for engineer company. So it's like, all right, cool. And that allowed me to really start understanding the role in billet. And it wasn't just for me putting an F on my fit rep, but it was me knowing what that role can do. And you know, it's unfortunate and it could be happening with any ranks in the Marine Corps and other branches. But I think like first sergeants get, you know, this Kool-Aid drinking, yes man mentality or whatever it may be. I don't know what, but you know, the stereotype kind of follows with it. And I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to be, you know, involved with the Marines as much as possible on a scale bigger than just a platoon, you know, and that was something that it was what drove me. So
yeah, that's good.
Ended up serving that role for up until 2015. Then it got selected for first sergeant, and again, that was selected first sergeant Friday. We went out, celebrated Monday morning, got orders. And it was like, where are we going here? I&I duty in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And I was like,
wow,
where? I'm like, wait, we have something in Pennsylvania? I'm like, I don't even know what the heck's going on here. So immediately jump on the map and look, and it's about an hour and a half east of Pittsburgh, but it's not dead center of Pennsylvania. So it's kind of there. It's an old, you know, steel coal town. It definitely was kind of going through like a backwards in time, coming from California to South Carolina and then going there. It was like, oh, we're still doing wood paneling and you're asking me for a fax number. It was like, oh, okay. All right. So we're here. And it was definitely a difficult thing because not only I&I for the service member, but the family, you know, very small, you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere by yourself. So it was a challenging couple years, but learning it from the military standpoint of learning what the reserves are actually, you know, what they do and their role in the big picture and how we can get them involved with IAs and deployments and things like that, because there's a lot of eager dudes out there in the reserve world. And, you know, there's some that are just there for the 1 weekend a month, and it is what it is. But there's a lot of eager guys that want to get out and do some good stuff and learning how to get as much training value in very minimal time. That was probably the biggest lesson I learned from I&I.
Yeah. Is it pretty common for first sergeants to go to an I&I as a newly selected first sergeant? Is that
I do think so. And I think that's probably a primary fill for newly selected first sergeants, because you know you're going to get that full 3 out of them. If you got a first sergeant that's done a year already or 2 years in that rank, and then they're going to be in zone for sergeant major, you don't want them to go out on I and then have to pull them a year in or something like that. So I think that's probably
makes sense.
Something what they do. But it was definitely a shift. Wasn't expecting it. Never really had a desire to go on I. But went out and did it. Learned a lot from it. And learned a lot from challenges. We had a lot of challenges on leadership, and just dealing with narcissistic people and individuals that can really hinder a unit's capabilities, just their function. And there was a challenge also, because you're looking at the reserve component and the active component. And then when the reserves come on deck, you hand them the keys and let them run with it, in the sense. So you got to give them that authority and things like that. But at the same time, it's like, hey, we do this every day. I'm going to show you how it's done. So it's kind of a challenge at that. But those are all great things you learned on those duties, on those duty stations.
Yeah, very important things to learn, especially, that first sergeant realm going into the sergeant major realm. I think it's a good aspect, for them as they're progressing in their careers.
Yeah, and especially for a first sergeant, because, granted, you don't get jumped into like the operational, tempo of things or what the mission is, but it allows you to see everything. I mean, I was doing unit diary entries and learning how the medical system actually works. And then I was also the collateral FRO. So I had to go through and set up 4 lens classes and family days and things like that. And it was like,
wow,
all these little details. Everyone does a collateral duty on I&I duty. Especially if you're a staff NCO, you're wearing so many different hats. You're like, we had a gunny. He was the food mess chief. He was the supply chief. He was probably, I don't know, just RSO for everything. And, just all the stuff that comes with it. And then when you look at it, you still are expected to have that maintenance readiness, that overall readiness when it comes to your fiscal year training, your calendar year training. But you only get a certain amount of time. Like doing the rifle range in 2 days is all you get.
Wow.
It's like, so you've got to condense everything. And sure, there's waivers to stuff, but you've got to condense a lot of stuff. But then you also have to understand, what could we do in preparations to set us up because of that limited time. So you're always thinking of stuff like that.
Yeah, that's time management to a T, man. That's incredible.
Tough.
Tough stuff. Wow. So what happened? Now, how long have you been in at this point?
Let's see. That was, we'll say, when I was leaving I&I. That was 2018. So that was about 18 years in, 17,
18 years. Okay. All right. So, you're experienced, even though you got, promoted early to gunny, which put you ahead a little bit. You still had been in the Marine Corps a hot minute at that point.
Yeah. And I think, even when I grew up, and you probably saw it too, when I first joined, EASing Lance Corporals wasn't a bad thing. And, getting NCO in your first contract was like, you were a rock star. Like, it was very unheard of to see a sergeant at that. Right. And then you saw those, 15, 16 years in service staff sergeants. And I remember seeing those guys as we were prepping to go in 03, just all those guys, you're like, damn, you're kind of old. Realizing they're probably only like 30, but we all age like dogs. So just looking at it as I think throughout my career, I kind of saw people achieving those ranks a little faster. And I just think that was kind of the timing and the evolution of the Corps in a sense. So
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So leaving I&I then, where were we getting orders to?
So that fortunately, I was able to get what I asked for. It's been a while at that point. So I asked to go back to Pendleton and I got orders to 1st Combat Engineer Battalion.
Okay.
So
Nice.
yeah, got to go back up to San Mateo. San Mateo is such a dirt hole and I love it. Because it really, after the I&I and just even being with the air wing for so long, I just loved being back to the ground side. At that point in my age, I was like, this is gonna be tough, but I was like, let's do it. So it was back to continuous hikes and always out in the field training, things like that. And battalion of CEB is a standalone battalion up to like 1,200 personnel. So it's like you really are constantly training. You're supporting all the infantry units when they go on deployments and out, providing all that engineer support. And so it's always interesting to know that as a company first sergeant, you never had your full company. Like you always had somebody out. And it was really cool to just go back and be involved. And I got to work with some phenomenal people, and it was a great Twilight tour for me.
Very nice. Very nice. You said it's Twilight tour for you there.
Well, so at that point, I was passed over.
Okay.
I got passed over for Sergeant Major while I was leaving I&I duty, and it was because I didn't go to SETME. Well, at least a factor, we'll say. I didn't get to go to SETME. I initially was scheduled to go. We had some life changes happening to where I had to, pull out from the course. And then, the Sergeant Major at the time was like, you lost your opportunity. Freaking, I'm not sending you again kind of thing. So I had to write out I&I. So when I got to CEB, they're like, all right, we got to get you to SETME. Got to get you. And so I was already passed over. It's fine. I was dealing with a lot of injuries at that point and went to SETME, learned a lot there. While I was with CEB, went down to the border, the Mexican border, and we were doing all the sea wire that was being hung up. I think it was 2018, at the end of 2018. Marines were doing that. We were running all the way from San Diego to Arizona. All the way through. So that was a crazy month. And then also when I was with CEB, was able to go back over to UAE and did some cross lateral training with the Emirati forces and things like that. So yeah, we got to do some cool stuff over there. So it was still getting out and doing things, and I wasn't just stuck doing just daily battle rhythm things. And that was just awesome because I had a company commander who was just, foaming at the mouth to train, and I loved it. And
nice.
It was a great dynamic that we had. I had a great company gunny. We're all still great friends and all that stuff. But it's like we built this team that actually, when I initially was with Bravo Company when I joined the battalion. Went down to Bravo Company, went to SETME. When I was coming back there, I was slated to go to H&S because I was one of the senior guys and I was going to be in zone, and everyone was like, no, you should be in the H&S. But I had another buddy of mine that was probably as senior as I was, and he was going through some health issues and stuff. So I was like, dude, you take H&S and I'll take Mobility Assault Company. So we ended up trading out. Went with Mobility Assault Company and just, again, trained, loved those guys, learned all the breaching capabilities and just a lot of fun with those guys.
You're approaching the end of your career. So talk to me, like, how was transitioning and getting prepared for retirement and all that type of stuff?
So I'll be honest with it. Like probably after my second P, um, there was a little bit of disheartening, just upset that didn't get to continue that on. My career was ending. It was inevitable
Right.
at that point, right? So it was a lot of challenges, and I was dealing with so many injuries that I neglected over the years and things like that. So I actually got really heavy into drinking, which was really bad for me and things like that. And ended up retiring, and it in the long run, it was probably the best thing for me. It was time for me to go. My body was pretty much at point where it needed to be taken care of. It wasn't going to allow me to neglect it anymore and stuff. So, and it was just it was time for me because I knew that there was, this was going to happen. It happens to all of us.
Right.
So, let's just take it and run with it and not try to, I guess, be in denial, or something like that.
Right.
So, ended up retiring and was given a great opportunity by a buddy of mine, just through networking, to join the company that I'm currently in, and been working this job for almost 3 years now. So it's been
nice.
A good opportunity, fortunate and blessed opportunity to take of leaving the military, because that's a scary time for a lot of people. You're leaving not just something you've been doing for, this is a career that you're leaving, and it's a lifestyle you're also leaving. So it's
very true.
A lot of things that you have to just kind of work through, and it is definitely a challenge. So.
Yeah. What were some of the things that that helped you as you were transitioning, and the mentality and those types of things as you were getting ready to move on?
It's as I get through a lot of those challenges and struggles and stuff, we get to those points where it's like it gets really hard and you're just like, how the hell am I going to get through this one? It's whatever it may be. And I just kind of tell myself this saying, I don't know if it makes sense, but I tell myself, humble yourself through hindsight. And I try to tell myself that to say, remember, like, use hindsight to remember you've gone through some stuff. This isn't that bad, things like that. And it just kind of settles a lot of that anxiety and things, and it just works through some of those challenges that you experience. I will say one of the things that I would share to everyone is take care of yourself and really prepare yourself for that transition. I was just I wanted to focus and be with the Marines and train with them. But at the same time, I was deathly like afraid of medical, because I knew like I wasn't taking care of myself, but my body was beat up. And I was like, I grew up in the Marine Corps of like, you don't go to medical unless you're broke. Like, you suck it up. It doesn't matter. Like, I dislocated my shoulder in the field and it was popped back in. And it's like, if you go to medical, you're a bitch. And it's like, all right. So you just never went to medical. And I remember on the depot, there were times where I was like smoozing corpsmen. I'm like, dude, just give me a Z-Pack. Like, please. I would go over to the PTs and be like, can you please drain this Baker cyst out of my knee real quick? And, it's like little things like that, just toenails coming off as you're changing socks and things like that. So it's like those things over time, just if you don't take care of them, they'll catch up to you. And that's definitely what happened. I'm broken back and torn ligaments and all this other fun stuff. So it's like, definitely take care of yourself as you're transitioning, at retiring in that sense, because you got to get your VA stuff set up. I didn't do that. Now I'm fighting against current getting it all done, but it's like, please, for everyone, just if they're in that position, to just take care of yourself and set yourself up. It'll save you a lot of frustration.
Yeah, that's true. I've noticed as time has gone on, going to medical is not looked at the same way as it was for me and you, right, growing up. But I see more and more guys, and I push guys to go to medical. If something popped up and they're like, "No, I'll be all right." No, man, you're good. Go to medical. Just go.
Yeah,
And
just get a doctor.
if I'd just take him over there and say, "Hey, look, check him out, make sure he's good." Because it is important, and when you neglect it, it takes a toll, over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I mean, I've torn my ACL. I tore my ACL in 2004. Neglected it through DI school, through drill field, through all that. Never, still haven't received surgery for it, but it's like all the other additional things that caused.
Yeah,
It's like that's from my own neglect. And, we're all stubborn as Marines, but it's, is what it
very
is.
true. Yeah. Yeah, well, we are stubborn. It's all good. I think
Yep.
that's what makes us what we are sometimes. So it's all
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, what would you have to tell everybody, as you looking back over your career, your lifetime here? What is some advice that you would have for some individuals out there?
Oh, wow. I mean, just life's crazy and you never know where it's going to take you. I mean, just if you listen to this story, my story, you could just see, some weird kid from a coastal beach town in California that had no desire to be in the military, makes a career out of it, and had all those experiences. And you never know where you're going to go. And, just I'm learning now is life's a lot easier when you accept that you can't control it all. And, it's whether that's that warrior in a garden mentality is just, find your peace. Um, be passionate on what you do because our time is short and valuable. So, spend your time with what's important to you. And, for the Marines, hey, your first tour, it always sucks. It always does. I mean, I went through working parties after working parties, my own accord. And I'll leave you one final story if this is going to be worth it. So when I was with MSSG 15, I was 20 years old. I was an underage drinker, as bad Marines are, just problematic ones. And I got caught plenty of times. That's where I learned how to dig holes. And I dug a lot of holes, which eventually grew to the ship and all that fun stuff. But there was one incident to where a buddy of mine was getting married to the woman he fell in love with at the barracks, and
Yeah.
Had a wedding reception over at Santa Onofre Beach, and we went over there, and one of my buddies had a great idea of grabbing a keg, so we got a pony keg, went over to the beach, and there was about 9 people there. And it was like, well, this is no fun. What are we going to do? So I ended up calling some girls that I knew from high school that were actually going to college down there in San Diego. And was like, hey, let's meet up. And we ended up traveling down. It was 4 of us inside of a Jeep Wrangler with a pony keg in the back. And allegedly that there were steps being taken while driving. And we're driving down. I think we were like hollering at girls and just being wild. I mean, the driver wasn't drinking. He had some beers earlier, but he wasn't drinking at the time. We were partying in the back seat kind of thing, and ended up getting down towards the border, and we see the sign last US exit, and we're like, oh shit, we got to turn around. So we get down to the far left lane and we go to do a U-turn, and there's a border patrol agent sitting there and he's waving us through. Well, there was a stop sign that the driver didn't pay attention to. So the border patrol agent stops us and yells at us, puts a flashlight in the back, and he sees me just hugging a pony keg. And he's just like, yeah, pull over. So pull over, breathalyzes us all. I think the driver had like a 0.05 or something. So he had some drinks or whatever. He was of age, but they snatched him up, took him in for wet and reckless. And it's probably because of our 3 dumbasses acting a fool, just drunk. I think I blew like a a .2 or something ridiculous. But they handcuffed us on the border. I'm having this bright idea of like, well, I bet you I can get the handcuffs in front of me. So I'm trying to wiggle out of them. They're yelling at me. I get them behind my knees. They're like yelling at me to sit down. So I'm running across the border with handcuffs behind my knees. I get tackled and all sorts of stuff. So it was just being a ridiculous, immature turd, right? And they bring us back, hand us over to the Navy Shore Patrol, and the Shore Patrol calls the duty. Well, the staff sergeant on duty at the time is one of our staff sergeants.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'll be right there. And he didn't show up. Like, we just sat down there. The Border Patrol agent or the Shore Patrol guys at first were, like stupid Marines. Few hours, they're laughing with us. And then by the end of it, we're all hogtied and, strapped up on the ground. One of my buddies, I think, had tape on his mouth or something because we wouldn't shut up. And so, anyways, we get back. My chief warrant officer shows up. It's like a Saturday morning. He wants to choke slam me and all of us. And at that time, we didn't do like NJPs and stuff. It was like, your ass is mine. So, like, working parties, just like dig a hole until I'm tired kind of thing was like a mentality.
Yeah.
It was like, all right. And it was just a wild thing. So the fun part of this story is that my wife goes back to her parent command when she found out she was pregnant, and she was getting closer to EAS. She's going in for a weekend safety brief, and all of a sudden somebody's spouting out, don't be like these dumb Marines that decided to take a keg down to the border and blah, 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 and just starts going. This is a completely separate unit, right? And my wife's sitting there like, that's my husband. Like, whatever. So I became a safety brief with that one. So it's, last story is you never know where you're going to go. It's grow in different ways and understand, that I could look back at myself and want to beat the crap out of myself 100 times. And, but I take that hindsight and say, look where I've come from and look where I'm at and be grateful and blessed of what you got,
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. I like that. But yeah, we all do dumb things at some point in time. I will say Marines nowadays or service members nowadays have they're quick to go to the NJP route. And back when we were coming through, and you had to do some stupid things after you went out and partied it up or whatever. But it didn't go to NJP all the time. But we learned a lesson. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I had some. I would have never made a career if I didn't have, some of the guys that were ahead of me. There was, and I remembered that stuff when I was that person, when I would go into a barracks room and find the bottle of alcohol or something. And I'm like, you get the instant frustration, but the second I was like, yeah, that's me, and so I was like, okay. And I would just dump the alcohol, it's like, nope. And the Marines would be like, oh, brand new bottle. And it's like, you want to go to NJP or you want this to happen? It's like, no, that's it.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do it again. Like, don't be all butthurt about it. But it was like, I tried. There was a couple of NJPs that I still have a sour taste in my mouth as a first sergeant, because yes, you want to uphold, the UCMJ, you want to uphold the standards. You're not in a position to pick and choose which ones you get to adhere to, but at the same time, you can't treat everything black and white and can't have a zero defect mentality on everything because then we don't learn. And then we're just puppets. And, that's just the way I looked at things. And there was a lot of things that it's like you want to take exception to, but some people are just like, I got to set the discipline level. I got to set, I got to look at the whole unit and things like that. And that's where you could disagree. But as a senior Marine, as a staff engineer, let's consider all of it before we just say, this is what we need to do. Max them out, shit like that. So,
yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some that I'm like, I wish they didn't go down that way. COVID threw in a couple of them.
Mm.
Just a lot of stuff happened where it was like, I wish we didn't have to go down that route. And it affected Marines, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we all learn in different ways.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And we do the best we can in the situation that we're in, and hope that over time, it works itself out, and I'd say the majority of the time it does. It's just you gotta write it out sometimes,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, I appreciate you coming on. I've had a blast listening to your story. A great career. You did great things. I just the little time that I got to spend with you there, drill instructor duty or whatever. You made an impact on me. So, but yeah, did great things. I appreciate you coming on, telling your story, and I'm sure everybody out there is going to enjoy it as well.
Yeah. I think it's a silly little story, and I love that your podcast is, really pushing this out because it gets lost, especially nowadays, with social media. It can be beneficial, but I think a lot of people kind of get, doom scrolling and sucked into where we don't remember to talk with each other and keep our relationships going because we forget to call each other, we forget to text, and months go by, and we're like, "Damn, I haven't talked to you in so long." So it's one of those things that is really awesome. So congrats, man.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Well, hey, to all the listeners out there, just remember if you're struggling, you're needing some help and assistance, the VA has some great opportunities out there. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. I care about you. I know Kris cares about you. All the veterans out there care about you. We want what's best. One veteran life lost is one too many. So please reach out for help. With that, Kris, one last time, man, thanks for coming on and telling your story. Very much appreciated. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks. To all the listeners out there, just remember if you're struggling, you're needing some help and assistance, the VA has some great opportunities out there. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. I care about you. I know Kris cares about you. All the veterans out there care about you. We want what's best. One veteran life lost is one too many. So please reach out for help. With that, Kris, one last time, man, thanks for coming on and telling your story. Very much appreciated. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks.